There's a very well-known vegan diet that consists of only vegetables, starchy carbs, minimal fruit, and absolutely zero fat. In today's video, we will be debunking that diet, and I will be breaking down what the actual best diet is for menopausal women. However, before we get into the video, if you would like to join my free menopause course and community and download my menopause guide, click the link in the description. All right, my beautiful friends, let's talk fat. If you haven't guessed it already, the diet we will be debunking today is called the starch solution. So there is this trend, especially in the vegan space, pushing a very low fat diet and a very high carb diet for optimal health and weight loss. And the logic is that fat's bad, so the more fat, the less healthier you are. So you've probably heard the famous quote, "The fat you eat is the fat you wear," or "from your lips to the hips," which comes straight from the late Dr. John McDougall and the starch solution. His argument is that dietary fat is the cause of weight gain, and that if you just eliminate all of the fat, you will stay lean, trim, and slim. But is that what the science shows? And is that the best diet that has helped over 3,000 of my clients transform? Not so fast. So we first have to look at calories and calorie density, especially after menopause, because as you know, your body will change. So he is onto something, that fat is very, very calorically dense. I know you know that. There is 9 calories in every gram of fat, and there are 4 calories in every gram of carb and protein. So in a perfect world, having no fat would mean you're removing, a large chunk of calories. But as we know, in menopause, it is not a perfect world. So as you start to go through the transition, when you're in perimenopause, which can happen 15 years before the date of that last period for a whole cycle, and it can happen medically or surgically or to women as young as my age, early 30s. Because it's not just about weight loss, it's about losing the right type of fat and maintaining your muscle. Because if we just lose total weight, we're at risk for losing muscle. Then we're gonna look unshapely, and it's not going to help us live longer, prevent falls, prevent fractures, all of those things. So what happens during this transition is that our visceral fat, the fat that wraps around our organs, the dangerous type, increases from 5 to 15%. And this happens without making any changes to our diet. I speak with so many women daily and they say, "Rose, I'm not eating buckets of fried chicken, I'm not eating junk food, and all of a sudden the scale is up 20 pounds. What's going on?" It's the visceral fat. And there have been multiple studies now showing that calorie restriction alone does not help you lose visceral fat. And hey, starch solution does work. A lot of the times it works before you go through this menopause transition with your wonky hormones. So if you were to go back to starch solution hoping it'll do the same thing, it's not, because a calorie deficit alone is not gonna budge that visceral fat, which is now a good chunk of your body composition. So what does help? And that is what I preach, called nutrition targets. That is honing in on certain things along with calories, certain things like protein, like fiber, like omega-3 fats, and complex carbohydrates, to name a few. And it has been found scientifically that elevating protein and elevating fats in relation to carbohydrates does help with changing body composition, meaning you will be able to maintain and build muscle while you lose fat. And if you want that head-turning look where you go for lunch with your friends and they're all asking you, "Oh my gosh, what do you eat? You look so good," and you can say, "I eat plant-based," that's what you want. You want to look tight, you want to look toned, you don't want to look good in your clothes but not look good naked. So this randomized controlled trial found that women eating 1.2 to 1.5 grams of kilogram body weight coming from protein, we're able to lose more weight and build more muscle than the group eating less. And usually when you will see studies on weight loss, they don't give an analysis on you have to look for muscle mass versus total weight loss. Anything can work for total weight loss, but menopausal women, we do not want to lose our muscle mass because muscle mass is already declining rapidly year after year if you don't do anything about it. And then one final thing while we're still on the topic, starch solution is easy, right? If you just don't eat this and eat more of this, you're gonna lose weight. That's what it says. You don't have to worry about building your plate. You don't have to worry about trying to choose foods when you go out to eat because you're just forced to eating a baked potato and steamed vegetables. If that's what you want to eat for the rest of your life, all power to you. However, I know for myself and the vast majority of my clients, the 3,000 that we've worked with, they want to go to their favorite restaurant and actually enjoy their favorite vegan pizza or have a glass of wine and still lose weight or maintain their weight wherever they are. So with starch solution, you're just kind of guessing and hoping. It's almost like, imagine you go on your flight and the pilot gets on the intercom and he says, I'm not gonna look at the flight map, I've been doing this for so long, I'm just gonna turn right here and turn left there, and if I feel called for it, I will land the plane. Starch solution is a lot like trusting feelings versus logic. And logic and science is going to get the fat loss off of you because it's energy balance. That's all it is. We just have to figure out that right sweet spot for you in menopause. Now let's zoom out and see what the research shows about high fat diets and low fat diets. So there is a famous 2014 meta-analysis that compared high fat diet group to a low fat diet group. Both groups lost similar amount of weight. But again, that's weight loss, that's not visceral fat or muscle. And what that study showed is that all diets work, however, you have to adhere to the calories. And what do we know what happens in menopause? When we don't sleep the next day, our cravings go up. Women gain insulin resistance. That is when we eat a sugary or carbohydrate-rich meal, good carbs, potatoes, rice, what it be, and our body isn't able to pull the glucose into our muscle cells. So all this glucose in our blood, we're going knock, 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 pancreas, release more insulin. So our insulin levels are sky high and our sugar is just sitting there in the blood. That's when your A1C goes up. So many women we work with, they come in with elevated A1C. So in that case, a woman who is insulin resistant is gonna find it really, really hard to adhere to a low-fat starch solution diet. There is a famous study by Dr. Christopher Gardner who compared the Atkins diet to the Zone diet to the Ornish diet, which is essentially the starch solution diet in this case, and he found that for the women actually that were insulin resistant doing the Ornish diet, they had a really hard time adhering to it. They ended up gaining weight because they're just predispositioned to not react well with carbs. So with all that being said, the best diet is the one that you can actually adhere to. And if you're concerned with muscle mass, which I think you should be, this starch solution type diet is not gonna help preserve that. But Rose, what about all these women I'm seeing in menopause that have so much success eating starch solution and they don't have to worry about anything? It's so easy for them. So number one, they could have less insulin resistance than you. Number two, you really have to sit with yourself and say, am I okay with adhering to absolutely no avocados, no flax, no nuts? For a lot of our women that come in, they also have symptoms. And having the healthy fats in there, flax seeds, for example, omega-3s, decrease inflammation, decrease hot flashes. Having these fats really help give your body the same effects that estrogen once had on it. So you really have to ask yourself, do I want to sacrifice having more brain fog or having more hot flashes just because I know and this diet is something that I've done before and I don't want to try anything new. And when I first went whole food plant-based, I too was following a very low-fat diet and I had a lot of cravings. I was falling off more on weekends. I was having, these vegan junk food extravaganzas. And when I have the fats at each meal, I'm a lot more balanced. My energy is better, my hormone levels are better, and you really have to try it out to believe it. I have a lot of ladies that come in from the starch solution. Nika, for example, she was able to lose 30 pounds on the starch solution in a whole year, right? So that was half a pound per week, almost, like very, very slow, a little bit less. She came into my program after her skills started going up, after she was barely eating anything on the starch solution. She came in, we restructured her plate, taught her nutrition targets. She lost 40 more pounds in 6 months, a little bit over 6 months. So she lost more weight at a faster rate with something that her body responded more to, and it was more enjoyable. But Rose, if I take away all those healthy carbs, if I do low carb, won't my cholesterol go up? Well, number one, your cholesterol naturally does go up in menopause. So you really have to have more muscle mass on you. You really have to lose the weight and do the things to optimize your lifestyle. So if doing a little bit lower carb, more balance of fats and protein can get you to that weight loss faster, then absolutely do something that will be optimal. And you always have to go back when you see studies to seeing where the protein is coming from. Plant protein is protective. There was a study, the Atkins study, and that's shown that plant-based eaters compared to meat eaters had a much lower LDL. So fat is healthy when it comes from plants. Next, I want to jump to why we need fat and the omega-3 benefits of fat. So nuts and seeds aren't just tasty and addictive, they are nutritional powerhouses. There was a meta-analysis that showed 19% lower risk of cardiovascular disease if you take your saturated fat and replace with nuts. Crazy. And then I'm sure many of you are familiar with Dr. Brooke Goldner. She is a very famous plant-based doctor, and she is studying lupus and Sjogren's. Those are very detrimental autoimmune conditions. So her program is called the Rapid Recovery Program. And it's essentially eating 16 ounces of raw vegetables every single day and having 30 grams of fat coming from omega-3 sources like flaxseed. So within 4 weeks, all of her participants shown drastic reduction of their symptoms. And 2 of her patients remained symptom-free for 6 years without any medications. So this study is so important because it shows that having omega-3 fats fight inflammation. If you're doing starch solution, there is no way you would have room for those healthy omega-3 fats. And a lot of our clients who come in with hot flashes and brain fog and inflammation-driven symptoms, we give them omega-3s, flax, chia, hemp, they're sleeping better, their symptoms are reduced, and they have their brain back. So you really want to find something in menopause that ticks the boxes for muscle building, for symptom reduction, and for weight loss. And within the weight loss, making sure it's the visceral fat, the fanny pack, the spare tire, the menobelly. We don't care about total body weight loss, we care about visceral fat. And last but not least, like I was saying throughout this video, can you really stick to an ultra low fat diet? I personally couldn't. Maybe if it was the only thing that I knew would work or the only thing that exists, sure. But there are so many better ways out there, you just haven't learned the right system yet. That low fat group in the Atkins study that I referenced, they actually had such a hard time adhering to it. They were supposed to eat 10% calories from fat, but they actually ended up eating closer to 25%. Fat is super tasty and it's super satiating. So a lot of times women eating starch solution will say, Rose, I'm just looking for something after the meal. They eat a whole large meal with potatoes and beans and veggies, and they're missing something because they want that fat. And just closing this out, there is no right diet. For our menopausal clients like these, they do best eating what they like, and we just will tweak it to their nutrition target. So as long as they are ticking the right boxes for protein, for fiber, for calcium, for omega-3s, for iron, things like that, they can fill it with foods that they like and enjoy. I actually was able to go and meet and hang out with Simon Hill at his event in Los Angeles, and someone there asked him, Simon, what's the best diet out there? And he cited the study that he talks a lot about with Dr. B, which is studying stool samples. That large microbiome mapping study showed there is no one best diet, but the best diet has the most variety of unique plants. More than 30, more than 40 different plants per week. So pick a diet that you like, hit your targets so that you can lose your visceral fat and maintain a healthy body composition, and just fill it up to the brim with different plants. And if you are curious on how to set your nutrition targets and you're in menopause, myself and my team, we do free consultation calls. So go to the description, click the link, schedule one in, and leave me a comment here letting me know what you think of the starch solution, if it works for you, if it doesn't, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!